Yo, what's popping? We have day two of the Eastern matches and week one of the Countdown Cup, starting with the Titanic matchup of the Shanghai Dragons against the Seoul Dynasty, but maybe it was not the thriller of a match we expected. But first, before I get into this, make sure you subscribe, like this video, comment down below your thoughts, and share this with anyone you think might like it. Because if you like it, some other people might like it too. So just keep that in mind. Anyway, so Shanghai playing Lip, Fleta, Fate, Li Gan, Izayaki. Seoul playing Prophet, Fitz, Smurf, Iris, Vindame. And both teams enjoying the Tracer Somber Winstonberg honor composition to start out on Ilios Lighthouse, which ends up being a 100 to 85 victory for Seoul. And Seoul would win the map because, they 3-0, but it would be a 2-1 win. So Seoul basically positioned themselves to the point first, but it would take basically over a minute into the round before anyone would get a kill, and ults would actually be starting to come online at this point, which is pretty uncharacteristic with these guys. You would expect, some pretty lightning quick dives, quick executions on the enemy, but no, they were playing quite passively and like maybe feeling each other out a little bit. But yeah, so Seoul do get that win because they have the point control. They get a nice thing there. And they nano smurf into the backline the next fight, and Shanghai are content with that because they will go EMP the enemy backline. And overall, Lip does get more value because he's able to hack Smurf whenever he comes back, and now his backline isn't there, so he's able to take that extra damage from the hack now. He gets burned down, and Shanghai take point control. But then Fitz, after another lost fight, does a really smart play where he puts a translocator as bait beside Lip's translocator. So he watches for Lip to recall, basically, and he sits inside the room and watches him and notices when he's going to destroy the translocator. And he calls Prophet over. So Prophet and Fitz now dive onto Lip in his translocator room, which I guess the bait wasn't really necessary, but it was good to keep him there longer. And anyway, they take him out after he thinks that he's taken out Fitz translocator. And they kind of steamroll that into the map win. So a really heads up play from Fitz there. And showing that, he's still top somber right there with Lip. Don't get it twisted. We go over to Well next, where we get a 156 for Shanghai, where Fleta comes out on the Echo, and it's by far Shanghai's best look. Seoul don't really play fast enough to capitalize on Fleta being in the sky and his damage maybe not being as quick to come out. But he does capitalize on Lip's hacks very easily. Good dive stuff there. And eventually Seoul kind of mitigate the damage that he's doing because they start hacking him. But then that means you're not hacking Fate. So that kind of makes Smurf in a much disadvantageous position because one Winston's hacked, the other's not hacked. So the Winston that is hacked is going to have a much harder time controlling space, controlling tempo, and Shanghai kind of bring that to a victory. So that was definitely their best look. I hope they find more ways to bring out the Fleta Echo because it was great, and they gotta probably lean into that a little bit. Then we go over to Ruins, though. Fleta goes onto the Reaper, and Izayaki plays the Moira. Ends up being 100 to 99 for Seoul, and this is a very back and forth play or point that kind of comes out to just some mechanical outplays, I guess, at the very end. Because, Seoul's their entire strategy. They had the Moira. They're just going to run it onto the backline. You know what they're doing. They do it pretty effectively. Iris gets run down a lot. And they just, blow for blow. They do use a lot of ults in the fight, though. So maybe a little over-aggressive there. But anyway, Seoul do get a little premature flip, and then they close out a fight with the MP, so they get a lot of percentage there. And then Shanghai end up going super fast onto the Seoul backline after they flip back again. I guess I should mention that. So they have control of the point here. They go super fast onto the Seoul backline with the MP, and the Seoul backline explodes, and it's overtime. So it's like, oh no, Seoul have lost. However, they don't because Prophet and Smurf are still alive, and they turn the fight because they can, and they're that good. So yeah, they kill 3, win the map, and Seoul off to a pretty good start. Then we go to Pariso. And it's a 1-0 for Seoul, where Bebe comes in for Li Gan. He plays Brig, which is a big question mark to me because Li Gan doesn't have a bad Brig. Not sure why Bebe would be playing here. Maybe they had other plans for later into the map, but unfortunately they don't get past A because the Seoul Dynasty just stopped them dead in their tracks. So Seoul playing Tracer Sojourn now, and Shanghai playing Sojourn Genji. So a little weird that you're playing Genji and you don't bring in Who Are You. I think you maybe want to do that because Who Are You is the GOAT. Who knows? Anyway, Lip does get a nice opener on the Iris. However, Fate gets a bit over aggressive on the dive. He ends up dying, and Seoul just recontest. And from here, it's just long, drawn-out fights. There's like 2 fights for there's 3 fights total in this round, I would say. And they're just super long. Shanghai keeps pushing. They're like, we can clear them out. We can do it. We're at a man disadvantage, but we can clutch up. But you can't clutch up. The Seoul Dynasty are too good. They enjoy these long, drawn-out fights. You're just taking time off the clock. They are never able to get cleared out. They control the point still in the end, and they just kind of win after 2 really long fights, basically. Shanghai get like 90% or something, but that's not enough for this. And then Seoul legit just roll up, and they pull up. They get a hack on the back line. They roll him, and they just win. Then we go over to Junkertown where Void comes in for Fate because, yeah, of course. Ends up being a 3-2 win for Seoul. So Shanghai, they play Widow, Tracer, Sigma, Bab, Zen against Hanzo with the same composition. So this time Flood is just maybe in the back line trying to draw some aggro back from one of the snipers, hopefully Lip specifically. And it doesn't really work the first time, but the second time he draws back both Prophet and Fits. So, kind of massive value there. And it lets Fate kind of push in, take out Smurf, and they head into B. But B is just long, long skirmishes and just duels going on. And eventually Shanghai are able to clear them out because you have the core of the backline and Smurf sitting on that original high ground, but then you just have Prophet and Lip doing whatever they want. Or, well, yeah, all the DPS are just doing whatever they want, trying to get kills and however they can. So Shanghai do get those kills eventually. Helps that they force back Seoul off that high ground and take out that core. So that was the key thing. And they end up capping out B pretty easily. Well, not easily, but it consistently. It was not bad. Anyway, they then go on to C and they rotate up the far stairs. So they use the stairs that go through the mega and they're kind of fighting on that high ground directly outside of the Soul spawn. And Smurf ends up getting a really good flux in there because a lot of ults are traded, but the biggest one is Smurf's flux with a great ammo and great healing from Iris to keep him up there on the back because, Iris on the back is going to be phenomenal. You have no doubts there. So yeah, and they end up holding up strong. So once they get that stabilization onto C, they just don't let Shanghai walk into C at all, hold that space very well, and Shanghai don't even get the touch and they're stopped in the middle. And Seoul actually just kind of roll on their offense a little bit because they're playing a Tracer Somber ball composition, and instead of just Fleta in the backline, now the whole core of the DPS and the tank in the backline, they wait for things to die down, they explode onto the opposing backline, cap out A pretty easily, and then Lip goes over to Sombra and Void goes over to the Diva. And on B, it is a lot better because Shanghai's able to weather the dive because it's a lot harder for them to set up the dive, a lot less space behind them to go, and it's easier for Shanghai to get onto the Seoul backline. But they eventually do find a winning dive, helps with an EMP, and they just go through C. And on C, they get a nice pick off on Lip, so they have to back up a little bit, and then Smurf gets a minefield onto where the point needs to go. So all good there. And so Shanghai can't really touch, and Seoul complete the map not complete the map, but they get the win quite easily. So Seoul just looked a bit better than Shanghai. I do question Fleta at some of these points, and I question the Bebe pick, because Bebe was in for 2 maps here. I guess it makes sense on Junkertown because he's playing Zenyatta, sure, but for the Brig, just don't put him in. It doesn't make a lot of sense to me. But they don't fully seem to have an understanding of this meta yet, Shanghai. But then we go over to the Chengdu Hunters against the Guangzhou Charge. Ends up being a 3-2 for the Chengdu Hunters. Now they stop a reverse sweep dead in its tracks. So Hunters playing Jimu, Leave, Gaga, Monk, and Nisha, with the Charge playing Jimmy, Choi Se-wan, Piggy making his debut for the Charge, Xerneas, and Farway 1987. It's not that old. So Lijiang Towers is a 2-1 for the Hunters. They're playing as Sombra Tracer, Winston with an Ana Brig, where the Charge are playing as Zarya, Lucio, Ana with a Reaper Sojourn. Yo, I'm back because I've just watched Frags hit some guy on Mega Altaria in the Pokemon battle. I had to pause the video for that. It was crazy. But shout out Frags, fine podcast member, roundtable, whatever. Anyway, Guangzhou Charge, they're on the Zarya. That's what they do. On Night Market, Jimmy has a really good map. He gets big kills and a lot of the fight wins, and they do a great job of setting him up for success. Tracer one swaps over to the Tracer halfway through. And it's pretty close because it's just a Hunter can either dive into the back line over them, or they can, kind of shut down what they're doing there. But most of the time, not most of the time, but, half the time, enough of the time to win. The Zarya comp comes out on top, especially because in that overtime, Nisha hits an Ajax in the grab with Farway, and the Charge just focused him down super hard. It's not even on him. It's the grab came out, he beats immediately, he dies. It's there's nothing you can do. They have such great focus on him, and he just dies, and then they end up winning Night Market. Then we go to Control Center, which is 100 to 45 for Chengdu, and Choi Se-wan is on the Tracer to start this time. So they're playing it. Hunters are playing Genji, Sojourn, Winston on a Lucio now instead of the Sombra Tracer, and yeah, so Jimu Nano Blades and it's down, and the Hunters are just doing a great job stopping the Charge so they can gain enough. So yeah, the Hunters are just doing a great job not giving Jimmy enough space to cook because they're just not letting them in. You do expect, the Rush to maybe do better against the Zarya there. or I get in Control Center, which is more of his rush map, but it doesn't actually. And the hunters end up coming out on top because they just don't have any space to cook. Jimmy can't do anything. And then we go to the hunter or to the gardens where it's 100 to 90 for the hunters, and Tracer One goes back over to the Reaper, and the hunters go back over to the Somber Tracer. And Xerneas keeps dying pretty early, and the hunters dive is coming up pretty strong. But the biggest thing here was Nisha and Monk were playing very well together. Nisha had multiple boops off the map, and Monk was getting a lot of big key sleeps, whether it be on Piggy, on Choice One specifically, had a lot, whether it be in a Blossom or whatever. And Jinmu had some really pretty good showing and a big EMP to end out the round, and a charge didn't even end up triggering overtime. So the Hunters end up winning that. Then we go over to King's Row. It's a 4-3 for the Hunters. And the 4-3 is there, but it felt like the Hunters were very much on top. So they're playing Tracer, Sojourn, Winston on a brig with the charge playing Sojourn, Reaper, Zarya once again. And Piggy's just kind of walking to the point. He bubbles up the TP high ground. Doesn't really work out. So Tracer One switches over to the Genji immediately. And they gain some purchase by finding a kill on the Gaga and then nanoing Piggy to clean out the recontest on A. But then it gets a little bit rough because Leave gets 2 good picks back to back. He wakes up a little bit because he maybe wasn't there as much on the Lijiang Tower. Wasn't getting as much value as you would have expected. So it kind of stops him for a bit, lets him stabilize on B. But Choice One is able to Nano Blade and kill 3 to break through that arc choke. However, Hunter stabilizes with but Primaling Gaga. And they looked really good for them because there's not a lot of time left for the charge. And the Hunters have a lot of ultimates. So you think, they can just, play these ultimate advantage and win out. But actually they mess up because Nano Gaga goes in, maybe a little early, but the Nano wasn't that bad. But what is bad is he messes up his jump to leave the inside the enemy team. And so Jinmu tries to save the fight because, their Gaga just died with a raw blade, but that doesn't work out. And Choice One just nano blades and they end up capping. So they lose their ultimate advantage and they lose all momentum they had. And Charge just kind of build that momentum. They get some more ults and they end up capping out with a lot of stagger kills because it only took 1 fight to actually break through C and complete the map. And the Hunters had no ults to respond with anyway after they fumbled them all. So the Charge end up capping with like 40 seconds left or something. And going over to Chengdu's offense, they just kind of roll, actually. They just light speed. Because Piggy, I don't know where his bubbles went, but he gets antied and he just dies. He just ran over. And they just kind of keep going. Choice One gets cut out of the sky because he's actually in the Echo, which is a little weird. I don't know what the goal is there, but he swaps off pretty quickly onto the Genji. But Chengdu just kind of roll. They don't even need to use an ult until they get to the final of B, so they use an ult to cap there. And they stopped on C for like a fight, but overall not really. The Charge, they force that back a lot, and Leaf kills 2, and Jinmu cleans up, and they get a 4-minute and 14-second finish. And from there, Charge their offense. They have a minute. They don't really get anything going there. The Jimmy TP bubble once again doesn't really work. And the Hunters, they play a lot more passive this time because Piggy doesn't get as ran over because he's playing a bit more reserved. He's like, I gotta make sure that doesn't happen again. So the Hunters just patiently wait for an advantageous fight. If any time, they lose a member or something, they'll just back out. They don't want to commit to anything. They have a lot of time. So they only take fights whenever they have the advantage. And they basically just find a fight eventually with Jinmu Nanoblade and they kill 2. Then going over to Circuit Royale, we have a 3-2 win for the Charge. The reverse sweep begins. It gets some motor going on it. And Daisy comes in for Gaga. And it's basically standard Circuit Royale. Actually didn't look like Charge were even going to get through A. But eventually, they get... Nisha has a kind of a iffy window where it's a little too early, and then in return, whenever it hits the overtime, they don't have that window to kind of bolster their forces, while the Charge still have their window. So their window is a huge aspect of how they actually cap out the point on A. And also the comps, it's standard Circuit Royale. You have the Hunters playing the Hanzo Widow with the Sigma Zembap, West Charge are playing the Genji instead, so it's just standard comps, But yeah, so actually now, we get going through B, and they break through B eventually with a nice flux, because Monk was not quite on the transit. They had 99 on Trank whenever the flux came down, so just almost there, but not actually quite. And the Charge just they go through B pretty easily. They lose like a fight maybe, but nothing really big. And they do a recontest on B, but it doesn't actually work out. They commit ults and they lose, and they kind of fumble their C as well, because as the Charge are rolling through C, the Hunters don't actually fight down from their window. So they give the Charge a lot of free space, and whenever the Hunters have to now jump off of that high ground to contest the point, the Charge just kind of killed them as they went. And so the Hunters fall, and the Charge complete the map. Then we go over to the Hunters offense where they're playing Nisha Brig and Choi Se-won's on the Tracer. And you're like, well, why is Choi Se-won on defensive Tracer? I don't know for A, but for B and C, I do know because he was incredible on those maps, on those points. So on A, they break through with a Flex Blade Trank, which is actually how they pretty much get all of their fight wins. Is they Flex, force out Transcendence, then they Blade, and they win, and that's it. So a lot of pressure on Jinmu there because Leave pretty quiet in this match overall. From start to finish, I would say he had some moments on King's Road there. He had some moments on New Queen Street, but overall, he was quite quiet. So besides just that, the biggest thing was Choi Se-won. So on A, doesn't get a lot done, just doesn't. But on B, he's able to jump into the back line and apply a lot of pressure down there, and it kind of makes it a lot easier for the front line to do their thing. Because in the end, Piggy had 39% of the team's damage total. And I mean, Daisy had like 32, but it was like 3k less than Piggy. So Piggy was kind of doing a good amount of work. And I think that was in part because they couldn't focus everything onto Piggy. He had a lot more opportunity because Choi Se-won in that back line was doing a lot of work. Actually, he kind of stops the Hunters from getting their cap at all because it looks like the Hunters are going to do it. They got a lot of kills. It's finally on C, but then Choi Se-won gets a 2k pulse. He ends up killing the only 2 people left on the point. The overtime trickles down, and the Hunters do not finish. So then we go to New Queen Street, ends up 175-69 for the Charge with Gaga coming back in. He jumps off the map right away. But basically the thing is, the Charge have Sojourn Reaper Zarya again against the Genji Sojourn Winston. And this is the best Reaper map yet that we've seen from Choi Se-won. The Blossoms were getting a lot of value, and he was TPing in with the Nano Boost and the Speed Boost. He had it all together. He was getting at least 2 fight wins from it completely, which it doesn't sound like a lot because it's 10 minutes, but that's a pretty good amount of value from Death Blossom, right? And it just kind of was like the Charge were pushing them in. The Hunters didn't actually get very much percentage until the very last push, where they finally got something together. But part of that is also because they kept getting picked down by Jimmy and by both basically just Jimmy. So the Hunters would actually have 5 ults, but they wouldn't find a chance to use them because they just kept getting picked down. They didn't want to take a fight down a man. So they lose a lot of progress, they lose a lot of box control, a lot of time, and they bought the Charge a lot of that progress that we had out of their 125 there. Anyway, the Hunters do have a resurgence at the very end because Gaga gets a nice primal, stabilizes them whenever they're in their spawn, basically. Jimmu hits a Nano Blade, and Leave kills 3 to push the pot a little bit past the checkpoint, but it's just not enough. And then the Charge have a true reverse sweep looking to on the cards here. And then we go to Oasis, ends up being a 2-1 for the Hunters. Back on the Sojourn Tracer for the Charge with Zarya, and the Hunters are on the Sombra Tracer, so they're not doing the Reaper on City Center, which makes sense because they get rolled. Because Zarya, not very good on City Centers. You can't really walk on anyone. It's way too easy for the Hunters to dive into the Charge backline, and the Charge just got rolled. It didn't matter because, like, the Piggy was trying Doom, he was trying Winston, didn't really matter, and 3 of the members of the Charge didn't get any outs at all. Xerneas didn't get a beat, Jimmy doesn't get a overclock, and Piggy was on 3 different heroes, so of course he's not going to get anything in 100 seconds. Then we go over to University, which is 187 for the Charge, and it's a lot better here. This is the map you would expect the Zarya to work out on because, you can just walk on them a lot better, and it does work. There are some moments where the Hunters kind of have some fight back there because they're able to find some value through Nano Blades and things like that. And there are some misplays where Farwig builds a Nano really fast, but he doesn't get a chance to use it on either Piggy or Choi Se-won before they die. So they just kind of roll, so that it doesn't matter that you built it really fast because you didn't use it very fast. So let Monk catch up. But overall, that's the amount they're expected to win. But then you go to Gardens, and this is where Chengdu kind of pull into their own a bit because they're playing Pharah Tracer off rip with Choi Se-won on the Reaper. And the Hunters take this 100-92. So as soon as they start to see Pharah, they swap off their Zarya stuff. They go over the Tracer Diva. And Jimbo actually gets a map. They get the point control because of it. And then they get another fight win. And then Piggy says, oh, well, I can just fly at him because he doesn't have a Mercy Pocket. So he's not going to get any heals. So we'll just fly at him. He'll die. And they win. But then, Jimbo's, he has Barrage, but he doesn't care because he says, I'll just go Sombra. He goes Sombra. He hacks Piggy. Piggy's taken out of the fight with an anti pretty easily, as Diva is. And suddenly Hunters have control again, and this takes them to like 60%-ish. And now the Charge go back to old reliable on the Reaper Zarya, but here's the problem. They don't have the time to build up the ultimates to actually make that composition work, and they can't run as easily on this map either with the high ground. It's very easy to rotate back down, and it just never really works out. So they do get 92%, but it wasn't like an easy 92%. It was quite difficult. Anyway, Leaf ends up getting a 2k pulse, and Ajax Xerneas at the very end there. So, kind of the GOAT. But overall, pretty quiet for Leaf. which is a good sign for the Hunter. Because if Leave can be quiet and you can win a match, that's good looks. You like that because that means when Leave isn't as quiet, it's like he could be lights out, and the Hunters could be a very scary team. We'll go over to the final match of the day, the Philadelphia Fusion against the LA Valiant. Ends up being a 3-2 for the Valiant. They finally win a map 5, God bless. Philadelphia Fusion playing MN3, Zest, Belastria, Aim God, and Fixa, with Carpe being left on the wayside, with Valiant playing Easyhan, Becky, Marvel, Linksa, and Molly. And Marvel actually gets to play most of the maps here. Saucin only comes for one map, so that's very great for him. But Oasis ends up being a 2-0 for the Valiant, and they're playing the Somber Tracer, Winston, Brigana, and so is the Philly for most of the match. Both teams are just rolling the opponent's backline, though. It just feels like whoever's backline can get more value before they die kind of gets a better off in the fight. And Molly's doing it a lot. Molly has a really good series, whether it be sleeps, antis, whoever it may be. He has a great series in that regard. And Marvel's doing a great job of living, even when his healers are dead. He feels unkillable, which is really weird because Molly was dying often. He was getting value, as I said, but he is also dying. Philly do a really big misplay at 90% where they go into their spawn with EMP and MN3 pops it and immediately dies, and Philly don't get a chance to capitalize on it. So kind of lose City Center off of that kind of push. You waste one of the best ults in the game right now. And Valiant end up capitalizing on that and winning 100-99. Then Universities of roll because Valiant plays Sim, Mei, Ryan, Lucio, Bap, and Philly also play that, but they play Sojourn instead, and they just roll. Becky gets a big pick with an icicle off rip, and then they just set the tempo at the choke in front of the spawn doors. Not the one back more, but in front of them. And Philly just don't have a chance. They don't even touch the point after that. I don't think they touch the point at all in this entire match. Or in this round, rather. Yeah. Valiant just had a handle on what they were doing. Way better than Philly on the Reinhardt comp. Then we go over to Parisa, which is a 2-1 for Philly. They're back on this Somber Tracer with Valiant playing the Sojourn instead. And Easyhan basically swaps the Somber right away because he's not able to find any picks to open up the point on A. And Marvel's just consistently under extreme hack pressure. The only way that Valiant actually get through A is because Philly go aggressive while they have EMP up. The EMP comes out from Easyhan and the cap A out. But on B, it's just all Philly. There's some scrappy fights going on. A key moment here was Easyhan missed the solo EMP on Zest because he hit the recall button, and then they just lose the MN3's EMP next fight. So maybe if they had that EMP and it actually got value, it would have been big. But instead, Valiant gets stopped at that ending bridge on B. Then we go over to the Philly offense. It's honestly just kind of a roll. Becky keeps getting hacked and killed on the Tracer just immediately. It happens right away. It happens on the recontest. And Zest just kind of cleans up in the cap A. And then Philly just build up 5 ults and they win because they only have a fight to win on B, so they just do. Then we go over to Junkertown. We get a 2-1 for the Valiant. Fury comes in for Belastria. Dia comes for Easyhan. And Dia has a lights out game. Fantastic map from Dia here. If you have Dia and he can do this on at least one map, you're sold. Because he had a fantastic time on the Widowmaker. And Molly had a really great time on the Zenyatta as well. Both teams playing Widow, Sigma, Zen, and Bap. But Philly playing Tracer, Valiant playing Genji. And it just really was like an out mechanic from the Valiant, which you don't say very much. That's not really how it goes. But in this situation, Dia outperformed MN3, Becky outperformed Zest, and Molly outperformed AimGod, which that's not a stretch. Molly's very good. But yeah, a problem here is that Valiant let Philly push for free on A because they lost Becky. So they said, okay, we'll just let them push a lot. And they win the fight off of that, but the next fight they lose and they only had one fight there. And then on B, they also let them push all the way to the end. They barely touch at the end to hold them. And they went out there, but then final fight, crazy stuff happens. Valiant DPS both die early, so Philly get to push really hard. And then whenever they do come back, Dia is able to pop off. He clicks a lot of heads. Becky is able to live on the card. It's basically just the DPS at this point. He lives so long on the Genji somehow, and as Dia's just slowly picking off the enemy, not even that slow, just picking them off constantly. And Becky manages to live, and then he ends up cleaning up the fight. And just an unreal mechanical performance, unreal brain power from those guys. They really had no right to win that map or to win that point to stop the fight there, and they just did. And then anyway, we go to Valiant's offense where we get Becky on the Tracer and Diaz again getting kills. But this time Valiant's dying a lot around them, so they don't get a lot of pressure off it. Eventually, Fury rolls over and dies twice because Molly and Dia come together and they make an unstoppable force. And Philly don't ult over combat because they're like, well, we lost our Sigma, we'll just go. And the cap out A, and Dia continues to pop off on B, and Valiant kind of win. It's not that quick, but that's the general idea, is that Dia was the core contributor there. Then we go over to Coliseum, which is an 86-66 for Philly. And basically, it's the battle between the Reaper's Zarya comp and the Tracer's Zarya comp. The Tracer comp can kind of mess around with the backline a lot, takes pressure away from the front line, hopefully, onto the backline, and you have to peel for him. But eventually, that works at the beginning a bit. But the Reaper comp starts to prevail because they kind of ignore him, and the pressure that the Reaper exerts on Sasen, with who is in now instead of Marvel for the Zarya, becomes too much to overcome. And Zest just kind of walks onto him, and Becky done her swap, so it's just kind of a loss. Even whenever it was winning, there were some pretty big misplays where it looks like Valiant's going to win a fight and maybe take a big lead, but then Lengza gets boostioed, and Philly just kind of take that opportunity and win the fight. Because if that nano boost was onto Sasen or onto Becky or onto literally anyone else, it would have been huge. But unfortunately, Lengza got in the way and stopped the lead. But pretty good stylistic choices. I think that they both did a good job, but Becky probably could have been a bit more proactive, especially once they took the focus away from him. And then we go to Nepal, a 2-1 victory for the Valiant. Bellatrix comes back in, Marvel comes back in, and you get Sombra Tracer duels once again on Shrine. And Valiant end up winning. But it's just Zest and Becky going blow for blow on the enemy backline. And the Valiant backline is once again living a bit longer overall. Molly had some really great moments where he was able to evade Zest and put in the absolute work. And MN3 had no Zest, had no deaths on the round. But it also didn't feel like he was being as active as Easyhan, who, yeah, he was dying more often and maybe in some inopportune ways. But it felt like, to me, Easyhan had some bigger impact hacks and had more going on there. So I don't know. I'm not saying MN3 should be more, should die more. Obviously, that's not what I'm saying. But I just feel like there was something missing there. And especially, maybe it's just the target focus on his EMP, because there was a time in overtime here, Becky had to clutch up, and he gets EMP'd. But he's still able to live through it, get some big kills, get some big damage off, and secure the round for the Valiant. So maybe instead of not dying, Becky does die with better target focus from MN3 and Philly, it's a different game. Then we go over to Sanctuary, which is 100-76 for Philly, and Becky starts where he ended and helps that Molly hit a really big anti off rip. But Philly seemed to have a better handle on this round. Easyhan kind of has to bring it back from the brink. It's a really fat overtime and really fat EMP in overtime rather, and the Philly simultaneously combusted, just like instantly die. But Val still have another fight to go, and they trade point control for a backline dive, which I don't think is a very smart decision whenever the enemy team has 99%. Then you're forced to go on the point anyway, so I feel like that was a kind of a misplay. And Bellatrix hits a good primal, and Zest hits a nice pulse onto Lengza, who had rally up. If that pulse doesn't hit, maybe it's a different story, because the rally goes off and they have another fight win. But in the end, Philly have a better handle on that round, and they maybe it's because Becky had some worse angles to work off of, or I don't know, something like that. But it was pretty rough. And then we get Village, which is 176, but it was Valiant all day. They come out on the Sinmei Ryan once again, and they take point control, and they win. And then they make a really weird play where they TP onto AimGod in main, and he lives. But then Marvel's the only one that takes a TP back to point, so I know there's definitely a communication issue there, because he should not have been the only one there. And then both sides of Valiant die. So then Becky goes over to the Tracer, and M3 gets an EMP win. So that's just how it is. And then because Easyhan used the wall and they lost, he goes over to the Cassidy. And it's like, well, he's on Cassidy, cool. And Valiant end up bulldozing over Philly after a pick onto MN3. And then Easyhan, right? Final fight, opportunity. He gets dove, he gets nano, and he just kills 3. He just doesn't even look at the Winston, turns around, dinks 3 guys, and just wins. And Valiant win map 5, and that's it. So Easyhan comes clutch there. Some great play from Valiant. I'm really excited for them moving forward. I don't know if it's possible for them to make play-ins anymore, but I hope it is. It's not looking likely, though. Anyway, like this video, like and subscribe for more daily content. Thank you so much for watching, and have yourself a good one. Deuces.